All right, I guess we'll start with the Q&A here, Mayor and Steve, after this last council meeting on the 14th, which was the, first meeting in almost a month, I think, in the city of Marshfield. First of all, Mayor, just have you comment on just the fact that, you know, city officials were meeting again for the first time since mid-March. It was different.
Yeah, it was very different. It was a Zoom meeting, but we did, Zoom had some complications, so we did the video by Zoom, but all the aldermen were on phones. So we basically had two sources coming in. It really went over, I thought, rather well. It took a little bit getting used to making sure that, you know, folks don't speak over each other. And so there were, we really didn't have that many glitches. It actually went over pretty well.
All right, so then let's talk about the fact that you were actually talking about meeting. And there was an agenda item, request to approve plans for resuming council and committee meetings. Maybe just summarize the discussion and what was decided in the end. Where are we going to go to from here in terms of trying to keep city government moving here?
Well, what came out of that meeting was the aldermen there was a motion and a second to approve going back to having meetings. Smaller meetings can be done in smaller settings using very good social distancing. As well, the council meetings were going to resume. Finance, budget, and personnel, and the other committees were all going to meet. Public Works was going to meet, and the Finance, Budget, and Personnel and Public Works are all aldermen. So those were going to be used in the Common Council chambers and utilizing good social distancing. And then the council meetings would be, if folks wanted to show up, they could, or it could also be virtual. So that motion did pass that night with a 9-0 vote. This morning, I did take an action to veto that motion. So all public meetings are suspended until such time as the Common Council meets again on on April 28th. I did veto that this morning. The Common Council meetings, so the only meetings that will be going on will be the meeting taking place on the 21st, an organizational meeting, as well as the Common Council meeting on the 28th. And those will be virtual at this point. And then the Common Council at that time can have another discussion on how they want meetings to move forward. There was discussions with some of the city staff were uncomfortable with meeting too soon. We do feel it's a good example to the public. If everybody's going to be on, where it's safer at home, then we need to make sure that does take place. Realistically, can you have meetings? Well, you probably could, because we have big enough chambers where everybody could be 10 to 12 feet apart, and it would be perfectly safe. However, we do feel that we need to be consistent with the state government, even though the state government, they are holding meetings in person. And they do have folks that, are in by Zoom or something like that. So as of right now, based on the veto action this morning, all meetings are suspended with the exception of Common Council meetings.
I think if I can add to that, the discussion is a good one. On one hand, you want to get back to normal if you can, and be able to demonstrate leadership in person. On the other hand, for people to turn on, even if we had meetings where there were 5 members, let's say, of the Finance, Budget, Personnel Committee, 2 on one side, 2 on the other, the chair in the middle, staff out there, we could certainly, as the mayor said, meet the distancing requirements. But someone tuning in on TV might have questions as to, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be, not getting together with other people and doing these things. How come the council or a subgroup of the council is meeting? So I think that the mayor's decision, makes a lot of sense. And the council will have the opportunity ultimately to either override that or to come up with some other ideas that might be workable. But I think we're trying to do the best we can during COVID-19.
So let me get this straight. There will be organizational meeting on the 21st, regular council meeting on the 28th, and then beyond that, we don't know?
Well, if it depends on what the Common Council chooses to do, because there will be that discussion on the 28th, and I believe something like that of that magnitude deserves the entire body to be present, even if it is virtually, to make that decision. Information is changing all the time, and it's getting more and more confusing for the public because there are so many different trains of thought, but there's not one going down the road. There are some people that think that, we can open up. There's others that think that we can't. So what we don't want to do at this point is open up too soon, and then somebody gets infected with the virus. And we do feel as though the citizens are at a safer at home, and so we should exercise that. What we're hoping is that the state will come out with some good information, because what you see happening at the state level is that there are some people that are saying we should open up, and there are others saying this could go on for a long time. I think our state legislators have got to get on the same program, because when the public is out there looking at all these differences of opinion from the decision makers, that becomes very confusing. And we've seen some things happen in Michigan. We've seen some things happen as well. And I believe that's because the public is not being informed properly with enough information. So just between today and the next, full meeting on the 28th is 12 days. There's going to be a lot of things changing just within the 12 days. So I don't think suspending all the meetings for another 12 days is really anything to worry about if there's any serious issues that have to come up. So in other words, what happens at a meeting is, the different committees come up with something. And then when they do come up with something, you would see that go into the consent agenda. And so it would all be voted on during the consent agenda. Now, it wouldn't happen if there was something that needed to get authorization. It would go to the Common Council directly. And there were even a few items that we had the other night that normally I believe would have gone to finance, budget, and personnel, but it came directly to the council. So I feel this way that the city business can still get done. It absolutely can. It will just be done in a slightly different format.
Yeah, to add to that, there's at least one item that will probably be on the April 21st organizational meeting that would not normally be on that agenda, and that's for the very reason that Bob was mentioning. It's an item of business that I believe Dan Kinnick really needs to get approval for. We pulled it off the last meeting thinking we could run it through the Board of Public Works first for their recommendation, but he needs an answer in the next few days. So, the business goes on. We're not going to stop something that needs to be accomplished for the city to move forward. I will add one more thing on the veto, just so you know, when it does come to the council, the opportunity they'll have to override it would be with a 2/3 vote. And my understanding is it's a 2/3 vote of all the members. So it would require 7 individuals on the council to say that they want to overturn what he said. I think what you're likely to see if that doesn't occur is some discussion about what happens next in terms of making sure that the city business goes forward. But who knows? In the way we're in this COVID-19 thing right now, 2 weeks from now, the world may have changed. We may have gotten some direction from Madison or somewhere else, and there may be some ways that we can look at going forward differently. But for right now, it will just be the council.
So could they act on that? So they could override the veto on the 21st?
Well, let me take that. I have a call in right now to the city attorney. My understanding is that the reference in statute is to the next regular meeting of the council. It can be reviewed and possibly overridden. We do have this special meeting that we're required to have by our code, the organizational meeting. I don't believe in what I've learned in my years in government that would be on that agenda. I suppose it could be if the city attorney tells me that the statutory reference means the next meeting, whether it be a regular meeting or a special meeting, then this would be on for the 21st. Either way, it doesn't make a lot of difference. There's no meeting scheduled for late next week or the 27th of April either. So whenever it comes forward, it's going to be up to this body, meaning the council, to decide whether they want to allow the mayor's veto to stand, or if they want to discuss and vote on whether to override it. I'm starting out from the premise that it's April 28th, but we'll see what legal counsel comes back with.
Can you give us the specific wording in the veto?
I could certainly send you that email.
Yeah, or I can forward it for you.
Yeah, that'd be
I'll
fine.
just forward you the email that the mayor sent this morning asking that this item be vetoed.
Thank you.
So I'll just ask sort of a general question then in terms of like not meeting for, well, what was it, almost a month? How is the city, how's it ran? How's it gone? I mean, has there been a moment where you thought, boy, I really wish we were meeting under normal circumstances. I wish things were normal because this hasn't gotten done or that hasn't gotten done. In other words, how has city government sort of been operating here the last month since that last meeting in March? Maybe just, have there been any issues or any major delays in something where you thought, boy, I really wish we were still getting together on a regular basis because, we can't get stuff done now? Maybe just talk about what things have been like on a day-to-day.
Well, what's very interesting is from my perspective, the city staff has done an outstanding job of continuing to run the city. And one thing that was very prevalent, even though all the different departments, there's a lot of people working to really keep everything smooth. The fire department, the police department, streets, all the different departments have done a great job. And if you would have been here, if you would have seen what Deb Hall and the clerk staff had to do for the election and how it was being run, there was a lot of chaos outside within the state of, are we going to have the election? Are we not going to have the election? And they just kept trudging forward with everything. And it was really to watch it happen, to watch what the city employees have been able to do through all of this confusion has really been nothing shy of amazing. And they are doing, there are some here, there are some that work virtually. Everyone is continuing to go down the road to get everything run properly. It's not something that we'd be able to function with for years and years. But it is something everybody has been very up to the task. So this is why I'm calling for information from the state and our state legislators. Get with the program. Stop the quibbling between the clubs. Stop it. These are people's lives that are at stake, and they've got to do this because we hear all these things from, we're going to open up in a couple of weeks, or maybe it might get extended, and you see some things on the national news saying this could go to 2022. I mean, how irresponsible can they be? So what I'm hoping is that we can get some clear things, because I will tell you, what we have to do at the local level is we have to get out and work. Steve Barg has done a great job as city administrator, making sure that through all the chaos that is taking place outside, everything here has been running very smooth, almost like clockwork. You've seen that the city streets, they've been out. Wastewater has done a great job. Our police and fire have done a phenomenal job of keeping people informed and staying safe, keeping people safe. That's the number one job of government, is public safety. And so, but I will say that the entire staff, in my opinion, and being able to watch it the way I have, there is such a great sense of pride. And I believe that the citizens of Marshfield would be very proud of how the city has run through this confusion.
I want to thank you for those words, Mayor. It's very kind. And I think that we owe a lot as staff to you and the council for putting trust in us during this time. We've gone 3.5 weeks without public meetings. You did a great first step back on March 17th by signing that proclamation that gave emergency authority to make certain decisions and to keep business running in lieu of public meetings. And I've done a couple things during that time using that authority, but I've always done so in coordination with and consultation with the mayor and the council president. we're not looking to use authority to just go out and do things or spend things or whatever. And so I definitely thank very much Bob and Tom Witzel, our council president, that I could turn to them on some questions that came up. But I would like to echo what Bob said about some of the departments. First of all, Deb Hall and her crew were amazing, nothing short of amazing, conducting that election in very difficult circumstances during COVID-19. But others have been doing a lot of work. The police department, headed up by Rick Ramza, has been tasked with the idea of dealing with these questions that come up from people about, can this business be running, under the governor's order? What about that business? How come this one can be open and that one can't be? He's been following up with Wood County health authorities and others to try and help make those determinations. The fire department's had a lot of things that they've had to do just to protect their own fire and ambulance staff. When they go to calls, and make sure not only are they able to help people, but they're able to make sure that their own staff is safe. So many people have done so many things along the way to try and make this work in difficult conditions, and they have done an outstanding job.
I want to go to another item on the agenda then from Tuesday. Let's see here. Request to approve temporary memorandum of understanding with the police union bargaining unit, allowing staffing schedule changes during COVID-19. That was a presentation by the police chief, Rick Ramza. Mayor, you kind of had you kind of started out the questioning, as I remember, during the meeting. Maybe just take us back. What was that issue? What exactly first are they requesting, and what are some of the concerns there? And now I can't remember what the outcome of that was. Maybe just summarize that one for us, if you could.
Sure, I'll let Steve give you the specifics of what the request was.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not very good at taking cues. Well, what the police chief is trying to do in terms of trying to keep his own staff healthy and safe, it was trying to split up his work group a little bit and keep people more separate. So instead of the normal schedule they have where they have 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off, whatever, and they spend a lot of time overlapping with each other and being close with other people, they wanted to make it so that they would have the same people interacting with each other and minimize the chance that if COVID-19 occurred with one of our officers, that it would quickly spread. So we wanted to have, this group work 6 long days in a row, and then they're off for a while, and somebody else works 6 long days in a row. And that's the kind of thing that we have seen, those types of things. We're doing it ourselves in the public works area. Again, trying to minimize the chance that the entire staff would go down at one time and that the disease would spread. So that was his intent, to do a modified work schedule. It would have the officers working fewer than their normal hours by a little bit, but hopefully keeping them from, again, contracting and spreading the disease.
So then, Mayor, you had brought up some concerns. There was an issue about what they had implemented it actually before council approval, or I'm not sure. There was some issue there that you brought up during the meeting. What were your concerns?
Yeah, that was basically, first and foremost, we are always going to be cognizant of the safety of our police officers as well as our firefighters and paramedics and their safety. So that's never in question. And putting measures in place to protect them and keep them the safest, nobody is ever going to have an issue with that. So, but there were some procedural items that took place. Something was implemented before council approval, and that of course is an issue. And it had not gone through the proper review of maybe a financial review as well as an administrative review for the contract. So the initial or agreement that was there had to be modified by the attorneys. Again, not a big deal, but we want to make sure that when we do it the first time that we do it right, even during these times when we are in a global pandemic. And there's all that hoopla about that. We still have to make sure that we go through the proper procedures. And that was my, statement the other night. I'm very proud of the fact and happy with the fact that all the modifications were done properly, and the council went in and approved it 10-0. It was unanimous because, of course, we want to keep our police officers safe as we possibly can. So this was a modification to their schedule. And my understanding is from the police chief that it's something that they had, I believe there's 7 administrators, and they were in unanimous support of this. The council and myself, we're all in unanimous support of it. But we just want to make sure that even when we're doing these things, we do them in the proper sequence so that they're done right the first time. We don't have to go back like we did and clean it up.
Let me maybe just elaborate on that a little bit. You sometimes see us here have discussions and issues between the police or fire chief with the Fire and Police Commission, the council, the mayor, me, city attorney. There's a lot of people involved here. And sometimes it just comes up, who has the authority to do what. And I think the police chief started out from the position that there's a part in the police union contract in Article 3 that talks about his ability as police chief to make emergency staffing changes. So he kind of started off, I think, mentally from the idea that, if I have to do this, I will, because I'm given this authority to make these kind of calls. Well, we looked at it a little bit and talked about what needed to be done. And you have to say, what's the intent of that clause? And I think the intent of that clause is, and the city attorneys agreed, what if we had a train derailment? And suddenly we're going to have several days where we had ammonia leaking. And I mean, the chief has to be able, without modifying the union contract, to be able to call people in and say, look, I know you've worked Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, but I need you Saturday and Sunday. And not have a member of the union say, no, wait a minute. I've already been, no, I'm off for Saturday and Sunday. He's got to be able to do that on a moment's notice. I think the kind of emergency we're dealing here with the pandemic is not one that required that immediate action. And it also has some ramifications for financial issues. What about overtime, call-in pay? How's that all going to be worked out when people are working out hours? And so we really wanted to make sure that we had a thoughtful process and a memorandum of understanding that memorialized that for the period of COVID-19, here's how it's going to work, which was really very close to what the city police chief always spec'd out, but that we can all sign on to the fact that, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed in a way that our labor law attorney and others are confident. And that's the process that the mayor was referring to. And it's an important process. It keeps us from finding out later that we maybe violated Fair Labor Standards Act or something. Those are more than just routine dotting of I's and crossing of T's. They're meaningful steps.
Steve, then I'll ask you maybe this one. There was another item, staff updates, and it said report on staffing changes implemented during COVID-19. What about that? Was there anything more on that?
Yeah, well, I just kind of give an update. A couple weeks ago, the city, we modified the schedules for the street, wastewater, and parks maintenance employees. And we did something in a way with the same idea, the same concept as what the police just did, trying to break them into work groups and modify their schedule to keep them apart from each other. Again, trying to make sure that if someone ends up coming down with the COVID-19 symptoms, they're not exposing to any more than a small group. And so we implemented that, and I did that again. That was one of the items I mentioned that I talked to the mayor and council president and said, you know what, if you look at what's written down in this proclamation, it does appear that I have the authority to do it, but you know what, we're a team here. And I want to find out if the mayor and council president see it the same way as I did. So we did make those modifications. They are working a little bit less than 40 hours, but we've got them separated to keep them healthy and safe. And I just reported on how that's going, that it does seem to be effective. You noticed with the snowstorm the other day, the plowing went well, so it wasn't like the modified schedule made us less efficient in terms of clearing snow. And I also believe I notified the council that our desire is to wind this down. I hope I said that. We're watching what's going on with Governor Evers and Wood and Marathon County authorities in terms of this emergency declaration. Our desire is to get back to normal as soon as possible. I think Bob was hinting that we'd like to get businesses going again. We'd like to see a lot of things resuming, but ultimately we have to defer to the people who are in the health world. And but I think I just wanted to report that those departments are functioning and business is going forward.
A few weeks ago, you implemented a hope line, a community hope line with the faith community. Can you tell us how that's going? Are you getting any response from the community?
The Marshfield Community Hope Line was really, it's really taken off well. So, 3 days after the last Common Council meeting that we had, I asked members of the financial community to come over to see if there could be any relief to local businesses and homeowners, renters, citizens that need help. And at the same time, I had asked members of our faith-based community to come. And there I discussed an idea. My concern is that with all of this information out there, and I mean, you've got such diverse information up there and unease and people losing their jobs. We saw the unemployment rate this morning with how many, how many people have lost their jobs. And I will tell you, the problem with our national media is that they're coming out, and when they put this out, they're acting so surprised. And it's like everyone has known that people are losing their jobs. And what this does to the average citizen, and I believe I'm pretty average, it puts a level of unease in there and uncertainty and what's going to happen? Am I going to have my job? Am I not going to have my job? Am I going to get unemployment? Am I not? Am I going to get stimulus? What is it? And that leads people to be uneasy. That could lead to different types of abuses. It can lead to sadness. It can lead to suicide. And so when I asked the members of the faith-based community to come over, I put this to them. Is there something that you can do where you could put together something to where we can give people a number to call that need that help? They can always call 211. It's a viable source. The United Way has been unbelievable through this, as well as St. Vincent, de Paul. And so we as a city constantly refer to outside organizations to do this type of thing. Well, the folks that were there in the faith-based community, many of them, they jumped all over it, and they came up, they talked about something called the Marshfield Community Hope Line. And they've worked together very well with Marshfield Clinic Health Systems to be able to develop this line where anybody can call. You do not need to have a religious affiliation. It is open to everybody, whether you believe or if you're atheist or agnostic or whatever. There's nothing like that behind it, but it is a number where they can call. And so the folks that are there, they put it together very quickly. They've got a Facebook page now, so you can call and you'll be able to talk to somebody. Now, these are not necessarily folks, because people call with all different types of purposes, right? I need to know where I can get some food, or I need to go where I could get this, or people call with much more serious issues, and the people on the Hope Line can then refer them to the appropriate folks to get help. So my understanding is it's gone very well. However, I really don't know how many calls they've had or anything like that. You would have to contact them for that. But this is no different from us realistically saying, hey, if you want information on food, go to the United Way, or if you're go to the high school and you want food, we would refer you to the school district. It's very similar.
Yeah, I cannot commend and thank Bob enough. And, we have this group, I think we've maybe talked about it before, although we haven't met for a while like this, but about a group of community leaders, about maybe 18 or 19 people who have regular Zoom meeting calls talking about how we can meet the needs of the community. We talk about the health issues, of course, but we also talk about social and human needs, people needing food, people needing all sorts of things. We try to help them find resources. But Bob and the member of the faith community in that group, Pastor Andy Cavernan from Cornerstone Community Church, and others had this idea and started running with it. What about people who have really counseling type needs? They're hurting. And so this Hope Line has been a wonderful thing. And I think they've gotten quite a few calls. And I just want to bring up one more point, because I think the mayor did a great job of walking through what this is about. But I'll be honest, we had a recent contact from a resident saying, wait a minute, city, faith, are you guys Are you guys on the right side of the line? And I did, talk to the city attorney, and he verified that, in fact, what we're doing is very appropriate. We're not out there promoting a certain faith or a certain belief system. What we're doing is we make it possible for a link that those who want to talk to someone who are hurting emotionally or otherwise can contact this number, and someone will listen, talk to them, help them. Like Bob said, sometimes the call is just, where can I find food or clothing, or these other needs. But these folks talk to people. They don't. It's just a matter of really listening and being helpful. It's not like somebody calls and says, I don't have a belief system, and then they just hang up on them or something. It's really, they just want to put legs on their faith to try and be a help to our community. So it's been a really good marriage, and the city is not the head of it. The city is not directing it, but we're certainly glad that it came together, because I think they're meeting a need that's important.
All right. Was there anything else from the Tuesday meeting that stood out? I mean, it was a lot longer agenda than I actually expected to see based on, the situation we're in. But there wasn't, it was just a lot of minor housekeeping, bookkeeping things.
No.
Any other highlights? What was the other highlight?
First thing we talked about was a huge thing. And
Saving money?
Saving, and we're not just saving $50. We're saving, what was it, Steve? $5.7 million.
I think.
We got an interest rate of, and Steve will have to get you the exact thing.
It was 1.33%.
1.33%, which means on that bond that was there for, I believe it was 19,745,000. Now, 19,745,000, when we take the interest rate from whatever it was down to 1.33, we're going to save $5.7 million on that. And so, when they came the first time, there was, I think, 5 different things, and we were going to, worst case scenario, we would save about $4 million. They thought best case scenario, we would be able to save 5.5. Well, it's actually up to 5.7 and some change. So it was interesting because, to be honest with you, the presentation was very good. It was very thorough. I just wanted to get to the vote, because who's going to oppose saving 5.7 million? I mean, that would be an interesting vote. So that went over, and we're very, very happy that will be very helpful to the utility and ultimately to the consumer.
Yeah, it's good for the ratepayers. It's good for the utilities in terms of things that they might have to do in the future. It frees up some money. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars each year that they won't have to pay in interest. And that's good for all of us. I also want to give a little shout out to Ellers. They became our financial advisor, if you know, maybe a little over a year ago. They've also now, at the same time, become the financial advisor for Marshfield Utilities. And, last year they found a way, working with Ron Allman, our finance director. They brought forward some ideas on how we could refinance some debt. We didn't save $5.7 million, but then we didn't have a nearly $20 million bond issue either. So those kind of things are so important, to have someone watching and monitoring the bond market for the right time, the right moment to jump in. And they picked a good time to refinance. And that bond that was out there, I think 10 years ago, I don't remember what the percentage was on rate for interest, but down to 1.33% on a $20 million issuance. That is a massive improvement.
So can you talk specifically about where that money, it says electric system revenue refunding bond. So when we're saving money, 5.7 million, what account does that fall in? Whose money are we saving? Is it utility money? Is it general fund money? Or maybe just talk about the specifics of the bond or the fund, and where the savings, I guess, for the city or the utility will be realized.
I think somebody was asking that of Nick during the meeting, weren't they? And I don't think he was real specific yet as to what that savings will mean on the Marshfield Utilities end. So that is a good question that, but presumably, since they intended to spend or expected to spend, $5.7 million more over time, is going to free up opportunity for keeping the rates down and making expenditures. They've got some other stuff they're working on, like replacing some lines and stuff. It's a good day for them. I don't know what the outcome is going to look like.
I mean, it's not like, oh, no, we now have 5.7 million for the city. Let's reduce our spending by that much in the 2021 budget and taxes go down by that much. It's nothing like that, right?
No, and keep in mind that this is not at one time. You know, they're going to save, I think it was like $500,000 a year in interest over the next, 12 years or whatever. So it's not like they suddenly had $5.7 million drop out of the sky. It's going to make it more palatable for them to do their annual budget. And like I said, this is my perception. This is what it would be like if it was at City Hall, Mike, to either, hold the line for us on taxes or be able to use some funds that we didn't expect to have for other projects. I assume that that's the world that they're in. And I know they've got things that they'd like to do that finances keep them from being able to complete. So I think that'll be a good conversation for the commission members on how to be prudent.
Yeah, okay, the savings aren't all at once, you're right. Okay,
Correct.
so it would be over the life of the bond.
Correct.
Which is what?
I don't know if this was a 20 or 25 or what that was, but again, I'll be honest, you can tell that I didn't ask a lot of questions, partly because it's not the city proper, even though utilities is part of us. But partly, I think we just all heard the possible savings and went, yay team. I mean, what a great day. Can I take something and go from that one, though? If you look down a few items later, we have the issue with our sanitary sewer late fees. Marshfield Utilities, following the lead and the directive, actually, of the Public Service Commission, the PSC, during COVID-19, they have waived the late fees on electric and water utility bills. Again, in the public sector, there's not a lot we can do to support our residents. We can't just suddenly go out in the corner and start handing them checks. But there are some things we can do, and I think it's imperative that we try to do those. So we brought to the council and said, you know what, if utilities are waiving or not imposing late charges on bills for electric and water service, why don't we do the same thing by council approval for sanitary sewer? And the council was very supportive of that. So during the COVID-19 emergency, our bills that we send out for sanitary sewer, there will not be a late fee for not making payment within whatever number of days it is, 30 days or whatever. Nothing will be imposed. We will reinstate that again when this emergency is over, but we're just trying to do even little things to show that we hear you, we care, we know there's people who have been laid off or furloughed, and we want to appear to be as helpful as we can.
Lost in all of this, Mayor, the fact that there was an election and you got reelected.
Yeah, it was, it's certainly a different feeling to go into an election when you're unopposed.
Yeah.
That was very interesting. But, when I did get the notification on Tuesday evening, even though I knew that it was coming, it's really humbling when you are on a ballot and people actually vote for you. There's really, it's an unexplainable feeling. It's a great sense of pride. It's also a tremendous sense of responsibility to really do the right thing. And I know that, myself and the alderman, Steve, city attorney, Deb, all of the folks that are elected officials or administration, that's really at the core, is that we want to make sure that whatever decisions that we make, they're the right ones for the people. And so it was very, it was very, very humbling to get that. It was not as nerve-wracking a night as the first one, but it still absolutely had the effect. And I'm very thankful to all the citizens of Marshfield that did vote for me. That sense of that you feel like the city is behind you really did feel good.
And I think sometimes cynical people will say, we don't get people running for council or mayor, they're not interested, they're apathetic, and we sometimes talk out of that side of our mouth. But then there's the other side. If you look at it, the mayor of Wisconsin Rapids and the mayor of Wausau were both defeated in elections. And they were defeated because they had someone running against them and another school of thought, another idea about how to proceed. So I think that in the midst of being cynical about people not running for public service, we have to take a step back and say, look, our elected officials, at least in the time I've been here, which is now 9 years, have largely been re-elected without opposition. If people were all up in arms if they felt that everything that Bob McManus and others were doing was flawed, we would have competition. So I think it speaks well of Bob and the other members of our council that we haven't seen a lot of competition. It suggests that they hopefully are paying attention to what we're doing and they don't feel some passionate need to replace our elected officials. I know no news is not always good news, but I think that this is a moment to reflect on the fact that that does speak well of the people we have on board.
So now so committee meetings and everything are sort of on hold for the time being, Mayor, but are you going through then with the normal process of making committee appointments, things like that? And if so, where is that process at? Are you looking for people? Have people applied? Maybe just talk about that part of city government as it moves forward, even though they're not meeting.
Well, we still do, one of the responsibilities of the mayor is to make committee appointments. So we are still going through those commitments. There are some people, many people that will be returning. Right now, I think there's only an opening on the on aging. And other than that, I think we are in good shape. But we still have to set the committees. In the organizational meeting, the council still needs to be given who those appointments are, because they will be getting their appointments to what committees, because we're going to have two new folks coming on, Quentin Rosenditch in District 3 and Ed Wagner, a familiar face to folks in Marshfield in District 5. And so they will be going on different committees. And it's very interesting because you try to take a look at your committees and you want to put, the aldermen they give you where they want to be. So they give you I want, this one's my most important, this one's my least. And you want to try to give the aldermen what they want, right? Because that's important to do. And at the same time, you try to balance what's there with, okay, this might be a new person with a really experienced person, so let's see what we could do there. But there aren't any major things coming up. So all of those committee assignments are still being made, and the council will get that on the 21st. And then ultimately, once they see them, they don't vote on them right away because they've got to think about them. Then when we come back on the 28th, then the vote will be then to make all those appointments, or to confirm all those appointments.
Yeah, let me add to that. The mayor has, been filling those slots, getting ready for Tuesday night. He's got his roster assembled. But I want to tell the public, and I'd like your help in getting this out. All year round, we need to hear from people who are interested in being on a board or a committee or a commission. We might get into May or June, and somebody finds out that they're being transferred, their company is moving them to somewhere else, or they're moving for some other reason, or they just family responsibilities. They just can't do justice to the committee that they're on, and they step aside, and we need people to fill in those slots. So if anybody's listening to us and has an interest, let's say you're interested in parks and recreation, or you're interested in preserving the history of our community, there are commissions and committees for you, and let us know that so that when an opening does come, the mayor has somebody to draw from, because sometimes it is hard, I assume. I've never had to do your job before, but sometimes it is hard to find people to fill those slots. Everybody's busy and they've got work and family responsibilities. So we want to hear from people all year round who would like to use their interest and experience to help benefit the community.
Just one final thing then. I would like to ask for the public to continue to be diligent on the social, on working around social distancing. It's really important. In our, a long time ago, and again this year, I was a soccer coach, so coached soccer for years, and football. And I know that one of the biggest mistakes that teams can make, coaches can make, is that you get halfway through a game, you're at halftime, and you think, oh, I can ease up, and maybe I'll just protect the lead I had. That is the worst thing you can do in sports, and it's the worst thing we can do now. In essence, we're at halftime. And we've got to continue to exercise great social distancing. So if you make sure that if you are going to go to one of the local grocery stores or Fleet or Menards, that just one or two people go. We really don't want the whole family going. And also, we really appreciate what I've heard from many of the local restaurants and businesses is that people are really doing a great job of supporting these restaurants. And that is very, very important. But please understand that the restaurants, their entire business model is completely different. Some were supper clubs that are now drive-through. And so please call your order in early and then don't go into the establishment and then just sit down and wait for the food. Let's make sure that we still exercise great social distancing so we can get through this as quickly as we possibly can.
Very, very well said, Bob. Very well said. The only thing I would add to that is that, people, I think the reason you're saying this is people are seeing good signs. They're hearing good signs, that things are going better than expected. But that is not the time to take our foot off the gas and figure that we've got something licked. This is a pandemic. It's a serious situation. We appreciate all everybody has done so far to try to keep it in check, but we need to keep going. We need to keep pressing on to make sure that we get through this well.